You're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to our regular council meeting of July 4th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Moved by Martin Lang, seconded by Trevor Bougie. Be it resolved that the July 4th, 2023 regular council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry be called to order at 7 p.m. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. We will now rise for the singing of our national anthem. All right, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? All right, seeing none, the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. There are two amendments to the agenda this evening. The first being item 5B is just to be moved to the consent agenda. And that is the Committee of Adjustment meetings from the June 19th meeting. So that should be in the consent agenda. The second amendment is an addition to closed session, and that addition is under the potential acquisition or disposition of land exemption, and the specific topic is potential disposition.
All right, thank you. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Trevor Bougie. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Any if opposed? See none, carried.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
are
Deputy
we
Mayor Lang.
moving 10A and 10B from the consent agenda into the open session?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lang. Yes, items 10A and B from the consent agenda should be moved into items for discussion.
Okay, so that's we'll call that a housekeeping item and resolution. Sorry, I didn't have my thing. I said we'll call that a housekeeping item and the resolution will stand as read. So moving to approval of the minutes, moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Sam McInnell. Be it resolved that the minutes for the following meetings, including closed session minutes, be adopted as circulated. Previous meeting minutes, June 19th, 2023. Were there any changes to those or a notice of corrections for those minutes? Nope. Seeing none, I'll call it vote. All those in favor? Any of opposed? Seeing none, carried. There are no presentations and delegations, so we'll get to action requests. 7A, presented by Ms. McDonald. I'll just read the resolution first. Moved by Sam McInnell, seconded by Trevor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 91, 2023 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to send notice to all owners of land assessed for drainage works stating its intention to abandon part of the Lapierre drainage works, specifically the road crossings on the unopened road allowance in accordance with section 84.2 of the Drainage Act. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, I have prepared a few slides just to guide us through a little bit of discussion.
That sounds great. Can you share your screen?
I'm going to try very hard. Do you see a basic kind of landing page? Excellent. I see Councillor Bougie nodding his head. So I'm going to jump right into a little primer on what is and is not an open road allowance and what that might mean to us as a municipality. So when we look at public highways, there's a very distinct difference between ownership and assumption of a highway. When we talk about ownership, that's something that small municipalities outside of urban areas like us in South Glengarry have in SCAD. So we own a ton of original unopened road allowances that haven't been opened or assumed by council through a bylaw. And these unopened road allowances, as I've said before, are available to the public. They can travel over them, and however, there are limitations. But once council agrees to open or assume an unopened road allowance, then now we have a maintenance obligation. And here in South Glengarry, we have a ton of unopened road allowances. So just for context and the broader picture of things on this slide, and this data has not been verified, but by that I mean we would need a survey for each of these unopened road allowances to determine if it really is there. But our best guess is these green lines are our unopened road allowances. And these magenta stars are our known crossings that exist on unopened road allowances. So you can see there's about 17 crossings and I would guess 300 kilometers of unopened road allowances out there in South Glengarry. Whenever we talk about opening an unopened road allowance, that isn't allowing someone to use it or clearing the land. That is passing through a bylaw, an intent to maintain or assume it. And this is the direct quote from the Municipal Act that kind of gives council that authority. So unless that bylaw has been passed, then section 44, which is the maintenance section of the Municipal Act, does not apply. So hopefully that kind of gives us a good overview of unopened road allowances. So my little summary on this is the public absolutely has the right to travel on open road allowances, but per our bylaw 3314, which is our unopened road allowance policy, they don't have the right to alter it or change existing topography. So at some point, and the real kicker here, and this is, I quote, it's in my staff report, but a municipality has no obligation to open or assume an unopened road allowance, nor do we have an obligation to make passage over them easier for the public, which I understand is very difficult for some people to hear because, they're public land, so to speak. So in this staff report, we're talking about, and hopefully, can you see my cursor? Perfect,
Yes,
thank you. We received a request to maintain the Lapierre drain, which is roughly here. So our drainage super is going through and he'll be cleaning it out, which is just taking a backhoe and, making it water flow a bit better. Along the Lapierre drain is a culvert on our open road allowance. It's part of Spring Creek that's between, I guess, the southern section of Spring Creek and the northern section of Spring Creek. And it's right here. You can kind of see a hydro cut. It's actually a Trans-Northern Pipeline. So the Trans-Northern Pipeline crosses the unopened road allowance about 400 meters north of the culvert, which is important. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Maybe. Did I stop? No.
Presently, you're still sharing your screen.
Oh. I got it. Maybe. I'm so bad with technology. Now I've
You're
lost you
good.
folks. All right. So my staff report talks about a bunch of stuff. It talks about the history of the trails that were at one point put in, and items, I think 13 to 17 of the staff report. And then it talks about how the municipality would go about abandoning drainage works if they wanted to. And as Mayor McDonald read the recommendation of the staff report, oh my goodness, excuse me, is to send a notice of our intent to abandon. However, since prior to writing, so our big push right now is we don't want to mess up the drainage superintendent's ability to maintain the drain. We don't want to slow him down, and we don't cause his work to not be successful by leaving in this culvert that's failed. So we're looking for options to enter into a partnership with a group of people or a person who are making use of this on a regular basis. So in writing the staff report, we also sent out letters saying, hey, if you're using this, please let us know. And I'm going to try and share my screen again. We've had a few responses. So hopefully that's not there. There we are. Not overwhelming because we didn't go out broadly, but we did have a few folks who were interested in and requested information about entering into an agreement with us. So despite everything I've said and everything that I wrote in my staff report, my recommendation tonight is that council defer this report to allow administration to pursue such an agreement. But we would be interested in hearing your thoughts on the broader topic, I suppose, and on this application specifically, because as I showed earlier, there are a number of such crossings in South Glengarry, and they're kind of outside of the bucket of money that we have and outside of our purview as administration. So they're not something that we look at. They're not really something that we don't patrol them. We don't really know what's happening with them. So we're looking for, I guess, just to hear what you have to say. But again, our recommendation tonight is to defer the report to give us an opportunity to enter into an agreement with some of these folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Are there any questions or comments of council? Councilor Jaworski and then Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. First of all, I wanted to thank Ms. McDonald for the staff report, and also an extra thank you for the information that you're presenting this evening. That's new. Particularly because I know that it is a lot of work on staff, these unopened road allowances, and you know, when you compare them to our roads and highways and the large dollar projects that we have, they are further down the priority list. And I was just so pleased to see that list of feedback from the folks that you had contacted prior. So I'm certainly comfortable with deferring to get a little bit more information on the usage. And I just, again, I wanted to thank you for getting that additional information, because I think it's just so helpful to be able to make good decisions moving forward. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for the report. Thank you for that slide you just showed. I'd like to get a copy of that with all our unopened road allowances highlighted in the crossings. I guess my initial input is that I know there's likely been some of both happen in the past, but I do know some culverts that have been changed. I know the culvert that's on the unopened road allowance at the north end of our farm has been changed. I'm gonna guess it was 25 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. It's a large one. Likely was expensive at the time when they did change it, to be more expensive now. So I'm okay with deferring. I'm okay with hearing what the public has to say, but my initial thought is that we maintain these culverts, and I don't think we need to maintain them to the standards we do on our regular roads. I just think we need to make them so that they're crossable, that people can get across. I did drive Spring Creek on Saturday or Sunday, I forget which day now, just to see what the culvert looked like, see how much use the road, that road allowance has had. And there was somebody's doing hay there, and you could see where they'd crossed the road, that culvert with their tractor and wagon, and we're starting a field on the south side, or the field north side. I don't know which way they came from, but it's obviously getting some use. If you're correct in your assumption that it's $4,000 to $7,000 for us to maintain that, I think the time to do it is when they're cleaning the ditch. So at this point, I'd like to hear what they have to say, but I think the township, it's our responsibility when a ditch is cleaned to maintain the culverts that our property, wherever the culverts are that our property crosses those municipal drains. So I think my first impression is we continue to maintain them, unless there's one that's, a huge amount of money, then we have to look at that one. But thanks.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Bougie, then Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for the presentation. And at first look as well, I was kind of leaning toward Deputy Mayor Lang and the fact that we have these culverts there, people are using them, and it's great to see that list of people that you reached out to and getting their feedback. I think is very important to see, because I'm sure there's going to be people coming out and saying, yes, I use this. And I just want to make sure it's crossable. I want to make sure that we're maintaining them. I don't want to go backwards either, but that's, again, my initial thought on this. Now, I guess in terms of drainage, if we remove that culvert, is there a way that the drainage would be sufficient without it? obviously the culvert's there for a reason though, like, but I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, I guess.
Good question, Councillor Bougie, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The culvert exists only to allow people to go over it. If the culvert wasn't there, then it would be an open ditch and drainage would be improved. I mean, when you put an obstruction in, and that's what a culvert is, it slows down water.
All right, Councillor McAnally.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm along the same lines as the deputy mayor as well. I'm fine deferring if we're going to get better consultation out of it, but at this point, I feel with some exception that we should be maintaining these open road allowances and their accesses. There's another one that I'm sure is going to be a hot topic or has been for yourself, Mrs. McDonald. Down south of North Lancaster, these unopened road allowances, there's spots where people are looking for access, and sometimes it's two property owners, sometimes it's a group of recreation users as far as four-wheelers and side-by-sides and whatnot and skidoo clubs. So I'm fine maintaining them. They're they're public property. And if there is a reasonable amount of people either looking for them for farming purposes or for recreational purposes, I have no problem replacing the culverts, with the odd exception, of course, like we've discussed. We've replaced some large infrastructure over the years for one or two residents that the property ended up selling for farmland, and it wasn't ended up needing in the past, but that's hindsight's 2020 on some of those. But no, when it's $4,000 to $5,000 for a culvert, yeah, no, I have no problem maintaining what we're already maintaining a service level we're already providing.
Thank you, Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. To having heard the comments of my colleagues, I wanted to add my main concern, my main feeling about why to defer was so that Ms. McDonald could develop an agreement with some of the users, because it does sound like it is a regular need that they need it, and I think that's part of our policy, and I think it's good practice as well. With regards to sort of overall approach for these, the low dollar value, I think supports moving ahead, and that it's not everything counts, everything adds up, but this particular, this is not an onerous one, and it does appear that it is getting, a reasonable amount of use. And sorry, I lost my train of thought there. And in terms of again, maintaining this access for our residents, I think it's, I think there has to be a pretty compelling reason to remove it. The only thing, I think is just important to keep reiterating is that, we're not we're not assuming them. We're not maintaining the unopened road allowance. It is simply replacing this culvert. And I guess that's why I think it's important to have these agreements with the other users in place when it comes to sort of more that when we're talking about true maintaining of the road allowance. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw Deputy Mayor Lang with his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I guess I'm not quite clear. What kind of agreement are we looking for? Are we looking for agreement where the residents help us pay for changing the culvert on our property, which is our responsibility to change? Are we looking for an agreement to allow them to use it? Like, I think we would be, I'm not sure what this agreement is, but I'm a little nervous because we got a pile of these road allowances, and I don't want to have to go out and start getting agreements for all of them, or we're going to have a pile of agreements. I'm just not sure where we're going with this agreement. Maybe Ms. McDonald could.
I can. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a number of agreements on unopened road allowances and on trails with people. We have community partnership agreements, which delegates the maintenance of, for example, the Peanut Line to the Glendalers, and it was a 10-year agreement and it expires soon. We have a 20-year agreement with Fournier and Summers. to where they are fully maintaining a good kilometer or so of our unopened road allowances. So there's certainly precedent within South Glengarry to delegate the maintenance of an unopened road allowance to an area where there is a willing user. In this case, I was hoping to move towards such a system where the people who are most using crossings on our unopened road allowances would bear the cost, and it wouldn't go against the general ratepayers, who would be our taxpayers. Since why, and this is my parents speaking through my mouth, but why would they pay for this crossing that they will never use and never have used? But however, if I'm understanding council correctly, you may want to defeat this motion and not consider the abandonment, and then we'll just pay for it, and it will be something that we do moving forward.
Okay, Councillor
Can I
McDonnell.
follow?
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Lang, and then we'll go to Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Just, I'm kind of weighing what you've said and what, I guess, and I didn't realize we had agreement with Summers and Fournier there, but I do know the road and I do know that they've done a lot of work on it. So it makes sense that there maybe was an agreement there. I did know the Glendalers had something with us with the peanut line. I wasn't sure if it was formal or informal. But there's a lot of road allowances being used by a lot of people throughout the township. I mean, almost all of them are being used in one form or the other. So, and this with a low budget number to replace it. I guess where I'm leaning right now in is that we defeat it and we just go ahead and replace the culvert while they're doing the ditching. It's the simplest time to do it. That's kind of where I'm at the moment with this, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess I'm along the same veins as Deputy Mayor Lang. I can understand in a sense the Summers Forney agreement, Glendalers, of course. They are maintaining a road to a higher standard than we would ever even consider maintaining an unopened road allowance to their sole benefit for the most part. In this case, I don't think there is a higher standard that road will be held to, really. If we're talking solely about a crossing, I don't think there's a need for an agreement, and I think it's a service we've provided in the past that. So, for example, myself, I'll never use this road crossing, but there may be a crossing on either an unopened road allowance or on the peanut line that I may travel, and I would expect that same level of service from the municipality as it's township-owned lands, and we know it's being used. I think there's separate, maybe it's a case by case basis, but I think where there's something like this, where there's a piece of infrastructure that people are relying on or people are currently using for, whether it's for economic purposes or recreation, I think we should be maintaining it. I'd be I think along the same lines of defeating the motion and just replace the culvert and handle some of these on a case by case. I don't think there's a need for an agreement in this case. I don't think you'll find enough appetite from the people making comments to be financially responsible for this road allowance either.
Yeah, and if I may, I think it would be prudent, and I know Deputy Mayor Lang talks about green roads quite frequently, because at that 300 kilometers and 17 structures that we know about, even if they're small, it's a significant portion of our budget. It would be nice to see it reflected in the budget if we are to take that overall tact where we are maintaining the small ones, because we can't hide from most of these went in probably in the 1970s and they're coming due now. I mean, you're looking at another green road and it's Butternut Lane. I think that's a bigger one, bigger scope, very much outside of the 4,000 to 7,000, but there are quite a bit of them out there. So some of our decisions will percolate through the community that way. And then I guess just on a heavier stance would be, I know it is our property and we get to decide what it is, and I'm okay with whatever council says. I know there's difference of opinions, but glad to go with council. Councillor McDonnell.
Yeah, I guess just for myself, a final comment would be, I guess if we look on this on a case by case basis where it has cost the municipality nothing, and for example, either a private landowner or an agricultural producer or a recreational group decides they would like to use that access, they gain permission from the municipality in a certain extent, or in circumstances where they're looking to use a single portion of a road or an entire pin, for example, where they have maintained it, they have opened it, they have given us our property back to us in a better, I guess, a more usable fashion, or they've cleared trees, added gravel, example. I have no problem maintaining that access. I don't think we should be putting gravel on it every other year, but I think just maintaining it to a reasonable standard is fine, and depending on the circumstance, of course. And that's where I know Miss McDonald has talked about unopened road allowances and bringing a new bylaw, and I know she has a million things on her plate at this point between different developments and different road projects. So I will not expect that anytime soon, but it's one of those. It's the one thing that rears its head every once in a while and comes back to either bite us or remind us that there's a major cost associated with a lot of these things. So I think maybe for the time being, we take these on a case by case basis, but in this case, I'm fine defeating.
Okay, Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. So again, speaking simply of the culvert and the small amount of funds and the fact that there's already work happening timing wise, and it's the township's culvert, and you want that kind of work to be done very well, and we don't want to make it a big drain on staff time. I'm still okay with the township covering the cost of the changing the culvert. However, when I'm referring to this agreement, I believe it's part of our policy that if folks are making changes to it or are maintaining it in some way, that there should be some, and I'm not referring to the culvert. Let's imagine the land above and like north and the south, that there should be, if there is, through the work that Ms. McDonald's already done, and I guess some of the feedback that's probably still coming in. If it sounds like there is that kind of use where folks are making, are maintaining it. And if she thinks it raises to the level that there should be an agreement, and I think we should be following the policy. So, yeah, that's, I guess I'd like her opinion on that. Like if we defeat the motion, how would what would be her next logical step in terms of would she drop the idea of having the agreement, or does she not see it worthwhile if we defeat the motion?
Hey, Ms. McDonald, I do see your hand, Councillor McDonnell.
I just have a piggyback on that. I guess on the same lines as Councillor Jaworski, would an agreement alleviate us from any liability in any sense? I guess in terms of say an accident was had or something along those lines, just to kind of piggyback, is there a financial gain to us or a liability gain to us that way as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer the first question, what would our next administrative step be? It would be to abandon trying to get an agreement written, since the road is substantially cleared and altered and has been since 67, 68, 69. We would ask the drainage superintendent to proceed with maintenance when he's doing the rest of it. So he would do it on our behalf. I will note that the farmer who requested maintenance, Mr. Robbie Smith, did offer to provide a little bit of cash towards changing the culvert. So I'm not sure if he would still be agreeable, but he did, even though he doesn't use this crossing at all, he did say that he would help us out if we needed to, which is quite nice. In terms of the second question from Councillor McDonnell, entering into an agreement for usage is something we can't really do without tying maintenance to it, just because of how the Municipal Act works, where the public has a right to travel. We would need a stronger unopened road allowance policy, I believe, that would allow us to work within a framework that doesn't tie the maintenance to broader usage. And I don't think any of our agreements currently provide exclusive access to any of our unopened road allowances. So while the Glendaler's, for example, can use the peanut line and sign it and have this maintenance agreement, they don't have exclusive access. And I believe that's the same for the Summers Fournier agreement as well. So they an excellent unopened road allowance. I drove on it the other day and it's fantastic. But again, they don't have exclusive access. And if someone was to drive on it, it would be well within their right. And the liability would be the same as any of them. Hopefully that sort of answers it.
Okay, that's good and very nice of Mr. Smith to offer offer that we should always take our citizens' kindness where we can. I did reflect on Robert's rules or Russell on roads, as if council permits grading and tree cutting on an unopened road allowance, it has let the genie out of the bottle, and this genie has been let out of the bottle decades before us. So we're kind of following down that inevitability, which was quoted there. Was there anything more to add? It looks like, I think deferring is likely where we're headed, but I'll give the last word to Councillor McDonnell.
I guess that was just more or less my comment was, as far as staff time and using it properly or using it wisely, I guess we'll say. I guess in that case, I don't think we have many. We have a handful of agreements. I don't know that the one is necessary in this case, and I don't know that it's really worth chasing one, because I feel as though this could be a very cumbersome project for Mrs. McDonald, and I think her time could be used elsewhere. I'm fine defeating it. I'm fine deferring it. I'd go with the will of council at this point.
I think I said defer. I should have said it seems like there's a will to defeat it and get this done. And then, if I may, something to consider in our 2024 budget proceedings perhaps is getting help for this situation. I don't know if that's time or person or consultant to help get that green road, because I have heard our deputy mayor and as well as council here, deputy mayor probably privately a few times about green roads and would like a policy. And I think these conversations would be beneficial to have that reviewed. And please do send Ms. McDonald that slideshow to all of us. I think it would be enlightening and good work. So I will read the resolution and then we'll take it to vote. Moved by Sam McDonnell, seconded by Trevor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 91/2023 be received, and that the council of the township of South Glengarry direct administration to send notice to all owners of land assessed for drainage works, stating its intention to abandon part of the Lapierre drainage works, specifically the road crossing on the unopened road allowance in accordance with section 84(2) of the Drainage Act. All those in favor? Any opposed? Defeated. Did I say that? Did you hear me say defeated? Okay, good. I turned my mic off for a quarter moment while I wrote. All right, moving on to bylaw 8A, employee recognition and expressions of care policy. So I do have a resolution for that, moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 92/2023 be received, and that bylaw 46/2023, being a bylaw to adopt an employee recognition and expressions of care policy, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 4th day of July 2023. Ms. Compo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. The bylaw that's before council this evening is to approve a policy for staff recognition and expressions of care. For those of you who were members of council in the last term of council, you may recall when we had our strategic planning session, there was discussion and council did express some interest in exploring some ways that we can, as a corporation, show appreciation to our staff in a more formalized manner. And it's a discussion that we've been having administratively over the last few months as well, which is what brought this policy before you this evening. I do want to comment that the township does not presently have a policy regarding recognizing staff or expressions of care, but that's not to say that we don't do anything presently. It's been very inconsistent across departments over the years. So there are times where you might recall a staff member who's been with the organization for 25 years being invited to a council meeting and receiving a watch. There are times where we have recognition at a retirement event. And then in terms of expressions of care, that would relate to circumstances where, say, an employee's immediate family member passes away, or the birth or adoption of a child. Again, we have, internally recognized those events, but again, it's been inconsistent across departments. So this is, something administratively that we're seeing as not necessarily a housekeeping item, but something to standardize that approach and something that we want to make a priority in terms of Recognizing our staff, the hard work that they do, their years of service with the township. And I think if you were to speak to any municipality across Ontario right now, you're going to find that we're all having a very difficult time attracting staff, retaining staff. And so I think this certainly is not the answer to that, but it's a small token of appreciation that we as a corporation can show to our employees, and that we value the very hard work that they contribute to our municipality. So I'm not going to get into the details of the policy that was provided in the agenda package, but certainly if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those this evening. And subject to your questions, that's what's before you tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Campo. Councillor McDonnell, and Deputy Mayor Lang.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for bringing this to us. It's a tough market for employers out there right now. I'm sure at some point we'll see a swing back. We always do. But I know in general, when we do talk with other municipalities, this has come up as something that's very important to retaining staff, not just with us, but with other municipalities and across all sectors. And it is something that's appreciated and noticed specifically by our employees, where we do recognize them. And if they aren't recognized and somebody within another municipality is, it's a comment made that, oh, well, maybe they care more about their staff. And I don't think any of us, I think everybody here appreciates all the hard work our staff do, and they want to commend them. So something that's standardized across the board is excellent, because some staff members keep their head down and push through and don't always get the recognition that they rightfully do deserve, and some just perchance do. So I think it's a good policy to have, and albeit something we should have been doing in the past, but something we can do going forward with a good policy. So fine with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yeah, not to belabor it, but we have great staff. I think it's great if we recognize them. So all in favor.
Okay, with no other comments, the resolution as read. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you, Ms. Campo. So now we'll move into consent items. I believe it was 10A and 10B brought up. So that's Q1 Operation Financial Variance Report. I think there's some interest. I believe it was Councillor Bougie brought it up, but also Deputy Mayor Lang also wanted to comment. Perhaps there were others. Councillor Bougie.
Thank you. And through Mr. Mayor, I'm just bringing it up here. So first, I'd like to thank Mr. Jane for putting this together, and I thought it was well laid out. I did like to see the breakdown of each area and the percentage as where we are up to date in the quarter. Just one quick question for Mr. Jane. Do you see any areas up at this point, any areas of concern within your report? Because some of them are over, but I mean, some of them are very minute numbers, right? So it really kind of blows it out of proportion. But is there any area of concern that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bougie. I first and foremost do want to thank the rest of the management team for all of their efforts and being able to compile these reports and providing their commentary on the variances to budget. I also want to thank the rest of the finance team for their efforts in compiling the reports. So thank you to all. At this time, the Q1 report is always a weird one because we haven't started many of our operations as of yet. That being said, the numbers are what they are. We know that we are significantly high on hydro and heat costs. That is something that we're seeing across the board. We are also high on fuel costs in subsequent months post Q1. And of course, we know that some of our tenders and projects are coming in well over budget. So while this is a decent snapshot of what our Q1 financial performance looks like, I think the Q2 report would be a much better barometer for where the township is going to end 2023. For sure, the bulk of the expenses are in infrastructure, and we know that those costs are significant, significantly over budget, just due to where the market's at. For the Q1 report specifically, I would highlight, as I mentioned, the hydro and heat costs. Those are quite high to budget, and we may need to increase our budget amounts in those areas in 2024. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lang, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, Mr. Janes, and I'd like to thank all of people that helped and coordinated with you. I really enjoy getting this report. Read it from end to end, and then I went back and reread some of it again. And I think, you know, there's things in there that maybe we'll have a little better idea of when we get the second quarter report, but then there's things in there that we can chat with you. But it's just so helpful for us to have an idea where we're going and to, you know, kind of see things as they unfold. And it gets our head around things. And then when we get to the budget this fall, you know, heat and hydro likely is one we need to talk about because those costs likely are not going down anytime soon. But thank you very, very much for the report. Appreciate it.
Councillor Jaworski?
I'll repeat on purpose just because I do really appreciate what's been done here, Mr. Jane. This is new and it is exciting. And it's something that you've committed to, and it's something that you've delivered on. So that's fantastic. It's fantastic to see. And I can only imagine that was a significant amount of work. So rest assured, it was appreciated. And as Deputy Mayor Lang said, looking through it, forwards and backwards, it is really important information that's going to help going forward. So thank you very much for doing this, and I look forward to how it progresses through the year, and it's definitely something that will help make our governance role much easier. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Jane. And I did like the detail. It's kind of fun to see everything as I said, we can really get lost in the weeds, but I think you presented a nice summary too for us at the top. So thank you for that. The second item was the update on tax arrears. That was the second item pulled, and I believe it was pulled by the same two individuals. So Councillor Bougie, and then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd like to thank again the Deputy Treasurer, I guess in this case, Ms. McDonald, for preparing this report. It was definitely an eye-opener here with some of the information shown, and obviously the department's very busy as nearly $1 million of prior year's arrears have been collected since January 2023. So that's a testament to their hard work. So thank you for that. I did just notice 40 properties have been sent to real tax with more to be registered before the end of June. Maybe can you talk us through kind of the steps and maybe timeline as to what happens next in those cases?
Certainly, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So presently we've sent, as I said, a little over 40, I think 46 properties now to real tax. What happens at this point is farm debt notices are sent out to all the property owners. And this is, again, they've already received 2 final notices at this point from us. The farm debt notices take 22 days to process, and there's mediation involved if someone is eligible under that. And after that, a title search takes place, a notice that a rear certificate is being registered. And then at that point, there's about 1 year where the property owners have to pay the cancellation price. And at that point, they've sort of run out of time. So even since registering some of these properties and starting the farm debt notice process, we've heard from a few more. So at that point, we stop the process and they have the opportunity to pay, and they may not have to pay the full amount, but they'll be able to pay a significant amount and get out of arrears.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Lang, and then Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for doing this, and I know, this whole council knows, and even the past council, that we've been pushing to get these numbers more in line with where they should be. And I'd like to be better than the average instead of a little worse, but than the average. And I think you really made some great strides in the right direction. So I think that's great. And I think the sooner we can get these things in order, the better for our residents, because everybody knows interest rates are going up. It won't change our interest rate maybe, but their interest that they're paying on their mortgages and so forth. And I hate to see people get into a real predicament where they can't get out. So the sooner we get these things in line, I think the better for the township and the better for everybody involved. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Yes, thank you, Ms. McDonald, for all your work on this one. We know it's a tough slog, and clearly you and your colleagues have been working hard at it. So thank you for that. And it was another thing that your department's committed to and obviously is already delivering on that. So thank you. My question is, and in the past, it's like there have been cases where properties in the end are sold, like they get to the end of the process and they're sold for very, small amounts that don't really cover the back taxes and whatnot. And I guess where I'm going with this is, and I don't know if this is possible in the process, but I'm wondering if at some point some of these properties could, like, there's like which ones they are, if it could be, I don't know, brought to council or council made aware of what they are, because, in some cases, perhaps the property would be of use to the township, for some future thing, or the township, being a different entity, perhaps would be able to wait on a property to sell it, outside of like some sort of legislative timeline to be able to recoup more costs. So I guess, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, is there a place in this process where the council could be made aware of the pieces of property and perhaps some potential options, something that, might be possible looking at rather than just disposing of them if they get to the end?
Let's go ahead, Ms. McDonald.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor. So what happens at the end of the year is if the township puts the property up for sale, it's an auction. So the highest bidder, it doesn't have to be, but the highest bidder, and usually that would be what covers the taxes. Should the taxes not be covered, we can choose to not sell it through the tax sale, but then we still have 2 years to decide to vest the property. And that would be the point when the council could decide if it's something, and when I say vest, that means we could take ownership. And if we vested the property to ourselves, back taxes effectively get written off. So the county portion is written off, the education portion is written off. And then there's a certain timeline where we can choose again, like I said, if we sell it again, we would have to, of course, give the share back to the counties or the education, but we would have the option to choose if we wanted to vest the property for our own uses or eventually sell it, depending on the property. And that would be a decision of council. I don't think we would vest it without council having a decision there.
Okay, so just if you don't mind, Mayor McDonald, just so I'm clear that I understand. So a natural part of the process is if it goes all the way to auction, and then if the auction selling price does not cover the back taxes, then that is when council is permitted to perhaps have a different plan for them. Is that correct?
Correct,
but not before.
There's no requirement that we become the owners of the property. It's sort of the option is there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and as we look at these properties, like there are some with tanks in the ground, and those are the ones that you typically don't vest, like an old gas station. Because as soon as the municipality takes ownership of it, it takes liability for all of the potential contaminants. But that's a case by case basis. So yes, I also want to say thank you. I think during our orientation, you looked at me and said, I got this. And just like in 2018, the shotgun approach worked. And to those of council who may be approached by some of these 40 or so odd properties as we dwindle down, it is a different process versus a realty. It's you do your buyer beware before you can't sell it on condition. That's one of the processes. So somebody asks you if there's conditions, it's no, it's fairly legislative. You buy it kind of caveat emptor, as is where is. So thank you for your efforts, and that's quite the number to decrease. Thank you, Mr. Jane and Ms. McDonald. Yeah, wonderful news. That's almost halfway from where we were in December. Okay, well, thank you very much. So that was it for the consent agenda, if I recall correctly. So then I will move the acceptance of the consent list. Moved by Trevor Bougie, seconded by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that council accepts the items listed on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Excuse my voice cracking. And now we will move to go into closed session. So moved by Sam McDonnell, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the council convene to close session at 7:51 PM to discuss the following item under section 239(2) of the Municipal Act SO 2001. 2, a meeting or part of the meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, specifically potential disposition, information supplied in confidence by a third party, specifically proprietary information, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by municipality, specifically plans for negotiation. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. So we will now go into closed session. We will return to open session following our discussions. And to council members out there, we will take a 8-minute break for a health break and return at 8 o'clock. But just so turn your cameras and you're done. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.